Welcome to another episode of Teacher Talks with Michael Klotz, a series of conversations with some of my favorite string players about their beloved teachers. Today I am joined by violist Cynthia Phelps in a conversation about one of her teachers, William Primrose. Hi, Cynthia. So nice to see you.
So nice to see you, Michael.
Well, I think you're coming at us from your home state of California.
Correct.
What are you doing there now?
I'm playing in a series called Mainly Mozart Festival. It's what it is a small chamber orchestra that's put together with principal players from orchestras across the country. And luckily, they were able to start this last year live because they had drive-in concerts, and they used a big fairgrounds in Del Mar to put up a big covered stage, and they put in lots of sound equipment, and people drove in, like 200 cars with people in them last summer. And there were like 9 concertmasters there, and just a lot of really great colleagues. So that was very uplifting for last summer. And they're doing it again this summer, but California just raised their restrictions, lowered their restrictions rather. So people are allowed to get out of their cars and sit at little tables and eat while we perform for them. And I don't think we have to wear masks. I have yet to find that out. But last year, of course, we did.
Yeah.
So it's some of the first live music happenings as restrictions are loosening, and it's very exciting.
Oh, that sounds wonderful. Yeah, it's so nice that we're kind of, we're coming back. And I know, of course, the New York Phil has been doing some things.
Yeah, a little bit. We did our first concerts in the parks. We got Bryant Park because it's kind of smaller and more contained, and they had a bandshell that was already, they have a series there, so that the stage was already set. And we played 4 nights in a row to 2,000 people.
Wow. Oh my God.
That was a really big deal. And we were able to sit next to each other and not wear masks. Everybody on stage was vaccinated.
Yeah.
So, it's, we're careful, but we're cautiously optimistic.
I started teaching back in person maybe about a month and a half ago, and actually, the difference just hearing somebody in the room with you as opposed to through Zoom, you can't compare it. And
you can't. It's so much better, and it's so exciting.
And being able to play, I played recently with some friends in Dallas, and being able to be so close and play chamber music again was just like a real miracle.
Never gonna take it for granted, right?
No, not at all. Well, we're so happy to have you as part of the Teacher Talk series, and
my pleasure to be here.
Would love to talk to you about your musical upbringing and about your experience studying with the great William Primrose.
The great William Primrose. Oh, I was so lucky. I feel so lucky. I slid in there underneath the radar. It was his last year of life, and so I was lucky enough to. He came to Los Angeles, and I played for him in a master class, and then he invited me to come and study with him at a festival on Victoria Island called Shawnigan. It was on the grounds of a private boys' school, beautiful grounds, and there were 10 of us in that masterclass. Paul Newbauer was there as well. A lot of colleagues that are scattered across the world now, and we had masterclass every single day for I guess it was about a month. It was really, really great. So
you had a lot of FaceTime with him then.
A lot of FaceTime in those last years. I mean, he couldn't hear very well. At that point, he'd lost a lot of his hearing. But he was just so happy. He was happy, very content, and he was generous with his time and with his comments. And it was really amazing. I have an amazing journal I kept from that summer.
Oh, wow.
I'm really glad.
Oh gosh. Oh, I'd love to hear some more in detail about that sometime. Can we go back to you were born in California, and I believe your mother was a violinist?
Yep, my mother was a violinist, and my dad was a real estate broker, and I have 4 sisters, and we were all born with perfect pitch for some odd reason. And
Mm.
my mother, who had started violin herself in her mid-teens, thought, as a mother with young children that showed aptitude, she was going to give them a very early start. And I've thanked her every single day of my life for that early start. She found us really good teachers. She did not teach us herself. My sisters play piano, cello, and then two violinists, and then me. I started on violin, but I quickly, as soon as I was big enough to hold a viola, I really wanted the viola because the violin E string and I just did not get along. It was just too high pitched.
Yeah.
So, and my mother was thrilled because then we had a string quartet in my family and a
Yeah.
piano quartet and a piano quintet. And when she played with us, we could do all sorts of things, and we did. So we performed a lot together as sisters growing up, and I learned a lot of chair music, in those early days too, which I'm very grateful for.
Yeah. And this was in Los Angeles?
Hollywood.
In Hollywood. Okay.
hmm
Cool. And then who was your kind of like your so who did you study with when you were younger?
So my violin teacher was Sybil Maxwell. She was sort of the guru of our area. And then when I changed to viola, I studied with a man called Sven Reyer. He was Danish. He and his brother Kurt Reyer were longtime LA people, and his brother Kurt was principal cellist of the LA Philharmonic.
Hmm.
And Sven actually took lessons with Carl Flesch when he was little. So he was really big on scales and etudes. And I got a lot of groundwork with etudes, which is, during COVID, I've just reverted to etudes. I've just been giving all my students tons of etudes. And I think it's been really good. I mean, an unusual chance to like really help people strengthen their technique. And they have to tape themselves too, right? Because Zoom is so unreliable. I would have my students send me clips of themselves playing, and that's hard to record yourself,
Oh yeah.
especially etudes. But
Especially road. Yeah.
especially, yeah. But actually, at Julliard this year, it was allowed for students to play etudes on their juries, which I think is awesome because some of them are really beautiful, and you can
Mhm.
really make some music out of them aside from strengthening your technique. So
Okay.
I'm grateful for that early training for sure.
So, and then after Mr. Rayer, is that did you then study with Don McGuinness, or how did you meet Mr.
Yeah.
McGuinness?
So I went to USC for 3 years. I didn't finish my undergrad there because that's at the point when I met Mr. Primrose, and he suggested that I study with Don McInnes. And I had also branched out a little bit, and I was going to work with Karen Tuttle at Peabody. But Mr. Primrose was very insistent about Don McInnes, and he called him up for me. And so before I knew it, I was enrolled at the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music, where Don McInnes was. And I finished my bachelor's there, and then Don McInnes went to the University of Michigan, and then I went there for my master's. So it
Mm.
was kind of, I mean, both Karen Tuttle and Don McInnes studied with William Primrose.
So,
So I was able to sort of get a direct legacy that way, which was really, really fortunate. But for my first 3 years at USC, I studied with Milton Thomas, who was also a real character. He played with Pablo Casals and Heifetz actually at the Casals Festival, and really colorful character. I mean, this is LA, right? So everybody's in the movie industry, and they're playing and scores for movies. In fact, Sven Reyer was principal violist of the Walt Disney Orchestra there, and I thought, wow, what a cool career. I'm going to be a studio musician. Cool. And then I went in and started doing some studio work when I was in college at USC, and I realized playing Ponticello for horror films for hours on end is not what I want to do with my life. It was not glamorous, and plus, the traffic getting around LA from studio to studio was
uh,
it was tough. And I thought, no, I'm too young to be pigeonholing myself like this.
what do they
Um,
say? Ponticello and footballs, right? Lots of footballs.
Tremolo, a lot of sound effects. I did a lot of horror films, I guess. I don't know. But the viola parts in movie scores aren't that rewarding. This was pre you know, Star Wars days
Oh
when
yeah.
John Williams was writing really cool scores. This was before all of that. So I gave up on that. Oh, interesting side note. Sven Reyer and his brother Kurt Reyer, the piston duo for cello and viola was written for them.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
and I'm married to a cellist, as you know. So we
That's
played the piston duo a lot. And I always think of my old teacher who gave me such a great foundation in scales and etudes.
really neat. Oh
Anyway, so
wow.
Yeah, it was good. So I worked with Milton Thomas until I then had a master class with William Primrose, who came to LA for a few weeks, and that was really eye opening. And he invited me to study with him over the summer. That would have been 1980, a long time ago, and that's how that evolved.
Amazing. So, okay, back now to the master classes in Shawnigan, you said, yes?
Yes,
I'll have to
yes.
get the spelling from you afterward for the edit. But
It's as it sounds with a W, I believe. But yeah, it was on Vancouver Island, Victoria. Um,
did Primrose live there, or did he have a home there, or was it just
Not to my knowledge. He was there with his wife and his daughter at the time. She was
okay?
only, gosh, young, 5 or 6.
I
Mona Primrose,
believe his daughter is married to Martin Beaver. Is that correct?
married to Mark
Okay.
Beaver.
Okay.
Exactly,
Very cool.
exactly.
Um,
So I knew her as a baby.
and so the work that you did with him, was it just in master class, or did you have private lessons as well? Or
It was just a master class every day. And so you can imagine over that long a period of time, we all got a chance to play quite a bit.
yeah,
So learning the Bartok concerto, the Walt concerto, all, pieces that were written for him
yeah.
was wonderful because he could give us all the inside information on, what was really going on with these composers when they wrote this music. Not well, but Bartok certainly.
I believe that you also played the Arpeggione Sonata, because I think I saw a video. From, I
Oh,
think there's a
that
video
was the master
circulating on.
class. That was the master class.
uh,
I was terrified.
oh, it sounded amazing, of course.
I was
Um,
really scared.
and what kinds of things? What did he talk about in your classes?
Well, here's the thing. I was, I had all this time and attention spent on etudes, right? And I started on violin. So my left hand was pretty strong. I had a lot of good muscle memory from starting as a youngster. But when I changed from violin to viola, you gotta handle the bow differently. You
Yeah.
you you draw sound out differently. It's just a lot of requirements that allow you that demand that you really get into the string and you really draw out a sound. It's a color instrument, so you use the bow differently. And I had sort of had this very violin-y grip that just wasn't really allowing me to be as flexible as I could be in getting different colors and sounds from the instrument. So, and I was very frustrated with it. I knew it, and it wasn't working. And he went immediately to the heart of the matter and said, it's about distributing my weight. And the thing about him, his bow arm was just so unbelievably free. It was so free. He could just in my notes in my journal from that summer camp, I have written down where does that weight come from? Because he had, this way of holding the instrument, the bow rather, with such a great weight disbursement. There was nothing lifted really. I mean, there was a little lifted, but you could see this unbelievable flexibility where he could just dig in, and he had a high, arm so that he could really use gravity. And
Hmm.
that was a big lesson. The fact that, you're drawing a sound out. You're not imposing the sound from
Right.
on top. You've got to use all of this weight here. And that was a big revelation. And it took a lot of tweaking and changing. But I was persistent and I really kept working.
So
And
he actually did help reform your the way you held the bow.
absolutely,
Wow.
absolutely. And
Amazing.
you know what? I'm just going to digress for just a second because there was somebody else, no longer living. Actually, she just passed away. I think it was just in the past 6 months. The violinist Camilla Wicks. I
Oh
don't know if
yes.
you're familiar with
Oh
Camilla.
yes, of course. Yeah.
She was just fantastic, and what a great teacher. And my sister was studying with her, and I spent a summer living with her in San Francisco. She also really helped change my bow arm a lot. And this was before I studied with Primrose. So she started me on this quest, and then he took it up and continued with it and changed my completely the way I draw the sound out of the instrument. And to this day, I work on that with my students. I think every single one of my students, I've had to say something about, hey, you know what? Let's think about this because you're not completely fluid. Whether it's getting to have a better spiccato, so that there's there is an awareness of when you need your fingers to be loose, when you need your wrist to be loose, when you need your arm involved. There's so many different kinds of spiccatos, and I spent a lot of time just sort of breaking that down with the help of all these great teachers, master teachers.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, and it's evident in your teaching because I mean I've had the privilege of watching you in master class and um and of course in a private lesson with my wonderful former student who's now your student, Laura. And
We share her.
I love how you really just get down to the nitty-gritty right away. And it's extremely useful and helpful, and it's clear that that's something that you're taking from your experience.
My own
Uh,
experience for sure. I mean, you cannot be an expressive player if you don't have all your tools lined up. You need your tools
right.
kit, and you have to you have to polish your tools all the time and be aware of what is the right tool to use for the right job. I mean, I don't mean to break it down to such a,
No,
basics,
but it's
but it
important.
kind of is. Unless you have a handle on that, you're going to be frustrated. I was really frustrated. I could not be as expressive as I wanted to be, and I needed to figure out why. And that's what these university years are for. It's, I mean, students come to me at Juilliard and they're like, shouldn't have this been fixed by now? And I no, these are the years. This is what it's for.
To do the work.
These years at university to really figure out and hone in on what's holding you back as an artist. And unless that's taken care of first, you're not going to play the most expressive Bartok concerto or
Right.
Brahms sonata, or you won't be able to plumb those depths. So let's figure out what goes wrong. And it's not just the bow, of course. With the left hand, there's shifting, there's intonation, there's so many things. Um, but the two hands work together, and if this one's struggling, this one's going to struggle too.
Mhm.
And I spent a lot of time figuring that out, and so I'm really happy to be able to pass it on and really be able to hear somebody and note exactly what's wrong and be able to do something about it. That's our job.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. What other so just getting back to some of the exercises, because I'm a big exercise fan also. Well, I'm trying to do my own exercise more these days too. But as far as left hand, do you use so I know you mentioned Carl Flesch, and I know that you do Rode.
Yes,
You do any Sevchik, Kreutzer, those kinds of things also?
Kreutzer, don't is really big.
Yeah.
Um, that's kind of it. I mean, those are the basics for me. The three books I always go back to are Kreutzer, Rode, we called it Rode, and Don't.
Mhm.
But there's more. There's Mogul. There's
Yeah.
Gavinier. There's Gavinier. That's a really good one. I haven't looked at
Yeah,
that one for a while.
that
But
gave me some
Fiorello,
Yeah,
yeah,
my
Fiorello.
teacher, my
What's
teacher.
that?
Well, you knew Zvi Zeitlin, my teacher,
Of
and
course,
I
yes.
remember when I was starting violin, I went through most of the Rode book, which was very helpful, and then Gavinier. But I really met my match with Gavinier. It's really
I know.
annoyingly hard.
It's annoyingly hard, and I have students also who want to play Paganini caprices.
Yeah,
I don't feel that they actually translate that well to the viola.
agree with
Um,
you. Yeah.
I know that Primrose played the Paganini caprices really well, but Primrose had a pinky finger that was the same size as his third finger. This didn't happen with him.
Mhm.
He had an unusually long pinky finger,
Wow.
and it's such a fluid technique. He was a violinist too, of course, before he changed to viola, which really disappointed his father. By the way, his father was not happy that he changed to viola. But he had such a great career, and he was such a fluid, nimble player, which was
Wow.
just astonishing. Just great skills, developed skills in his technique and his and so creative with his musical choices because he could be.
Well, what I always, I mean, just from the recordings that I've seen in the videos, I mean, I think that he certainly played with a violinist's temperament, you
And
know,
so much flair. Yes,
flair, yeah. But but the quality of the sound and it was really, I mean, never forced and elegant,
exactly.
eloquent. Never tried to play too loud, but always was heard, of course.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I remember Zvi telling me a story. He had flown. Zvi was like in Germany or something, playing at a festival or a recital, and I think it must have been a festival because there was a number of people. And then next door in his hotel, he heard a violist, and it was practicing one note over and over with different articulation, different lengths of bow, all kinds of, but he said it was gorgeous. And he said he knocked on the door and it was Primrose.
Yeah, I
And they
would
knew
believe
each
that.
other, from, and so, and he said, my God, I mean, for the last 40 minutes, I've been listening to you do this. Do you do this regularly? And Primrose said, oh, absolutely. I mean, different permutations with the bow and that kind of thing.
Yep, yep.
So,
And,
and
and
then he said once they were reading chamber music a long, long, long time ago. Zvi knew Misha Elman when he was really young.
yeah.
And Primrose happened to be at Elman's apartment and they were reading chamber music and he was just watching them. He wasn't playing with them at the time. But he said that Primrose played a Paganini Caprice on the viola flawlessly. And Elman apparently had a little bit of a jealousy streak. And he said something like, well, you're able to do that because it's easier on the viola because, the stretches are bigger. Or something like he had to kind of qualify, why Primrose was able to do
That's
that.
crazy. I mean, playing tense on the viola is 800 times more difficult than it is on the violin. Tense, come on. Even with Primrose's, extended pinky gift, it's still a tenth. It's a huge stretch, I don't know how big his viola was, but he was
Well,
just
he
got
had
a
a
good
few. I was curious. I was going to ask you about that because I know he had obviously, a few violas, and I know, well, Roberto Diaz plays on an Amati that he played on, but I think he also had a number of other. Do you remember what he had when you were studying with him? Or?
I don't. The clearest vision I have, this is a really funny story. I was playing Brandenburg 6 with a colleague of mine. And so we played it and he picked up his instrument, sort of, at that point it was just resting kind of here, he didn't, and he had a cigarette. Because this is, what do we know? He
Right.
smoked every single class.
Yeah.
And he had a cigarette between his, and he was playing boom, 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 boom. He was just doing the whole bass line while we were playing. And he looked up at us with those big glasses. His eyes were like 300 times magnified. He said, I love this piece. I love this piece. Boom, 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 boom. It was just so funny, so entertaining. And so I can't tell you how big the viola was because it was sort of half resting on his, torso. But I do remember that cigarette between his bow arm fingers and just how happy he was playing, And he passed away like the next spring.
Oh. And did you get to socialize with him also, or was it just strictly the classes? I mean, did you get to have dinner with him or anything?
We not dinner, but we'd have everyone would sort of convene it for breakfast in the big communal dining hall and have their tea, and he'd sit there with his tea and just he was very happy. He was an older father and he had a young daughter,
Mhm.
and he was just sort of in his element of feeling peaceful, and he wasn't terribly loquacious during meals. He just sort of played with his daughter and smiled and listened to stories. And
Oh.
but in class he would talk a lot about his experiences as a performer. He had a very funny story about Walter Trampler.
Oh, can you tell us
His
or?
name, I, I guess so. Walter Trampler's name came up by somehow in this one of the master classes, and he kind of looked off in the distance and he said, "Oh, is that the fellow that would wear the blue velvet suits?" And Walter Trampler was a very flamboyant dresser.
Mhm.
"Oh yes, I believe so, Mr. Primrose." He said, "I had a very nice career myself wearing black." That was it.
Wow.
Oh, okay. Not going to pursue that. And I
Wow.
remember when I played for him I went to Alan DeVerich was one of his students and lived in LA. And Alan DeVerich is when they brought him out to give this master class. So I went to Alan DeVerich's house, and when I gave him the check, my mother had written out a nice little check to him. He looked at me and said, "Thank you, my dear. That will keep the wolves away for a while." It was a check from some. Yeah, I just felt so honored and you know respectful, and he was always very jokey and warm,
Mhm.
um, and encouraging, very encouraging.
Oh my gosh. Wow. That sounds it's almost frustrating to me. I've been doing these teacher talks for the, since the pandemic started, and It's been a frustrating but wonderful because I think you know that I'm a history buff and I have such reverence for some of the teachers, artist teachers that I've been able to learn more about, like Chomsky and Gingold and
Yeah.
Primrose. But I really just wish I could have met these people. You know, I'm really envious that you guys we had these experiences, and I'm sure they'll be saying that about people of our generation, and certainly you one day.
Well,
But
just remember, Michael, you'll always be younger than the rest of us.
you look young, Cindy. You don't change. um,
I I was always sorry that I missed Bernstein at the New York Philharmonic
oh yeah.
because he died before I joined the Philharmonic, and all my colleagues talk about him all the time, and I just have to sort of, listen to their stories and internalize that because I never worked with the man.
Oh yeah. There must be some unbelievable stories.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Wow. Can you just tell us a little bit? So just okay, so we want to know a little more about your path to the principal viola of the New York Phil. You so after starting with Primrose, then you continued your grad studies, or
I did. Then I went to work with Don McInnes, and that was a great transition because it was exactly what I needed. I had a bow arm that was, you know, on its way to becoming something very strong and reliable. And so being able to finish up my graduate work with Don McInnes along the same lines of always talking about sound and drawing out sound and different colors of sound, it was exact same path. And so um, I really needed those years. I needed them to learn the repertoire, with my skills much more cemented. And I auditioned for the concerto competition at the University of Michigan with Bartok, and I won it.
Mhm.
So I got to perform Bartok with the school orchestra, which is great in Hill Auditorium. It was just wonderful. And then from there, I went to the Marlborough Music Festival.
Mhm.
I went back to LA and I subbed at the back of the section at the LA Philharmonic, and then Principal Viola came open with the San Diego Symphony. So I went down and auditioned for it, and I got that job. And this was, I mean, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my career. I really always loved chamber music and figured I would end up in a string quartet, especially after spending 3 summers at Marlborough, which really I learned so much of the chamber music repertoire, not so much the string quartet repertoire because they don't do that there, but all my viola quintets, and there's so much other stuff, piano quartets and sextets and clairtonat, all really the staples of the repertoire. But I really also enjoyed being in San Diego. Andres Cardenas was the concertmaster at the
Oh,
time, and
yeah.
it was just so many good people there. David Atherton was the music director, but then they went on strike, and I was recruited to audition for principal viola of the Minnesota Orchestra. And I thought, I don't know, Minnesota, like it's really cold there. I grew up in California, and I wasn't sure that I would be happy living there. But once we went on strike, you know, I had to throw my hat in the ring.
Sure.
And I was still pretty young to have a job like that. So I shared it for a little bit with Richard Marshall, who's still there actually.
Okay.
And Ado DeVart was a music director, and they ultimately decided to give me the job. And I was there for 6 really great years, and I learned all my Mahler symphonies, and I had a wonderful contract. Ironically, Deborah Borda was my boss. Deborah Borda, who then became my boss at the New York Philharmonic, and then became my sister's boss at the LA Philharmonic, and now
Yeah.
she's my boss again at the New York Philharmonic. So I've had her. I've worked with her my entire career, um, and she actually recruited me to come to New York, but said you're not going to get the same kind of deal you got in Minnesota, because in Minnesota I had a number of weeks off so I could continue to go play chamber music, and I was still doing competitions at that point, which because I wasn't cemented in what I really wanted to do. I just wanted to continue working and playing with great people. That was my big goal. I want to
Mhm.
play with great people. So by the time I auditioned for the New York Philharmonic, I thought, you know, I had a child at that point, and I thought I can't just take off all the time and play wherever I want. I have a child. I have to be in one place. And New York seemed like a good place to center myself because
Sure.
you could do a lot of musical activities without leaving the city there.
Oh yeah.
And so that was kind of the path I took. And I was happy that I didn't do any of my schooling in New York, I have to say, because I didn't know anybody, not
Yeah.
a soul. I mean, no ex-boyfriends, no, nothing. And somebody came up to me in the orchestra one of the first weeks and said, "Why did I know you? Didn't you go to Julliard?" And I said, "Nope, nope, no East Coast. I'd never spent any time in the East Coast except at Vermont at the Marlborough Music Festival."
Yeah.
So I feel that I had a very sort of roundabout good path. I made the decision to be in an orchestra, to really commit to being a principal player in an orchestra a little bit later, knowing what the life was like, and it's not an easy life, and you have to create um, a musical world for yourself outside of the orchestra, because just being one of 50 string players, you can't hear yourself. With the brass and the woodwinds and the repertoire, you just don't hear yourself, and so all these little things go out the window. Your point of contact, the finer aspects of intonation and bow control, bow management. It all you're just blah, and you can't hear yourself, and it's
Mhm.
it's not easy that way. So you have to commit to personal maintenance and projects outside of the orchestra if you are going to be an orchestral musician.
Mhm.
As a principal, especially because all of a sudden you've got an 8-bar solo out of nowhere. And
Mhm.
if you have any loss of control, everyone's going to hear it. It's a certain set of
For sure.
pressures that you have to be conscious and responsible about.
Well, I think I speak for everyone that will watch, all the millions of people, and that said that you have done an exemplary job. You really, you're such a wonderful musical citizen, Cynthia. I mean, with
Thank you.
your work as principal, and I've been very privileged to play with you, play
Likewise.
your music and your teaching, and I think it's really a wonderful example that you've set for everybody. And um, I was going to ask you, when you came to the New York Phil, did you succeed Paul Neubauer?
I did. I
Okay, so
did.
you came right after Paul.
Yeah, and it's ironic because we grew up together. We were in youth orchestras
Yeah,
together. We knew each other as young kids. So I think it's very cool that the two principal violists, I don't know how long I was there, but at least over 40 years maybe, were two kids from LA. That was pretty
and
cool.
it's really nice now that Chamber Society has been releasing a lot of old videos
Yeah.
of concerts, and so many times I think it's you and Paul playing together. Like that's
Yeah,
so cool. I think it's just amazing,
it is
actually.
cool. It
Yeah,
is really cool. And
wonderful.
I tell my students now, and I'm sure you do too, that watch how you safeguard your relationships with your colleagues, because these will be your colleagues throughout your career. And know that you need to have each other's backs. You need to treat each other kindly. It's really important. The music world is small, and
Yeah. And there's been so much. I mean, with the last year and a half with the pandemic, I mean, unfortunately, I feel like a lot of students have lost vital um, opportunities, with festivals and that kind of thing, and social media, and a lot of them are getting in trouble too. But but now I think that as we coming to the end of the pandemic, though, everyone's gonna really make up for lost time and
I think so. It
yeah,
was a blip. It was a hard blip, but
very hard.
it was one where I think people looked inside, were able to look inside and say, really, what do I want out of life? What's important? Life is a beautiful thing, and being alive is a beautiful thing, because a lot of people died, a lot,
Yeah,
and
we know
it's
people, unfortunately. Yeah.
yes,
So
yes, I do too. It's just doubly that much more important that we really, really cherish and are grateful for what we have.
absolutely. Well said. Well, Cynthia, thank you so much for your time.
My
And can't
pleasure.
wait to
Always
see
great to
you.
talk with you.
Yeah, can't wait to see you in person and play together again. And
Yes, I look
we
forward
look
to that.
forward to that. Okay. Well,
Absolutely. Thanks,
thank
Michael.
you. See you
Take good
soon.
care. Okay. All right.
Bye.